The U.S. says there is no evidence of extraterrestrial activity after it shot down a series of mysterious objects over North America. The objects have deepened the diplomatic rift between China and the United States, however. Washington accuses Beijing of running a high-altitude balloon program for intelligence gathering. The U.S. shot down another object near the Canadian border on Sunday, the fourth this month. Only the first has been officially linked to China. Beijing denies it was used for spying and accuses the U.S. of flying high-altitude balloons over China at least 10 times this year. Now, for more, we can speak to the German Marshall Fund's Asia Program Director, Bonnie Glaser. Ms. Glaser, good to see you again. So a lot of back and forth since the first balloon was spotted. Where do we stand? What do we know? And more importantly, what do we not know at this point?
Well, I certainly think there's more we do not know, including the 3 other balloons that were shot down over Alaska and Canada and Michigan, and even the first balloon. They are still in the process of collecting the debris off of the floor of the ocean. So we don't know whether China's balloon was sending radio signals intelligence, for example, live back to China. We don't know whether it was taking imagery, and we don't know what these other balloons were intended for, nor do we know whether they had anything to do with China. The United States has denied sending any similar balloons over China, so now this has become I think, a contest of what we call the blame game, and the U.S. and China are not really speaking in diplomatic terms that are aimed at resolving this issue yet. There is an opportunity coming up later this week at the Munich Security Conference where Secretary of State Blinken might be meeting, according to some reports today, with Wang Yi, who's the former foreign minister, now a higher level top diplomat in China. And if he does agree to meet with him, that's an opportunity for both of them to speak directly to each other about their concerns, but also perhaps tamp down tensions and reschedule Secretary Blinken's trip to China.
Yeah, much needed conversation to be had there. Now, you know Chinese politics very well. Let's look at the latest episode in this blame game. China saying that the U.S. is actually sending spy balloons to Chinese territory. The Biden administration says that his government and his administration has never deployed any balloons to China's airspace, and that Beijing's accusations are distraction tactics. What do you make of these claims? Is that a likely scenario?
Well, the United States, as you said, has denied that it has sent any kind of balloons over China. The United States does quite a bit of surveillance and reconnaissance around China, but not inside its territorial airspace. So that's the distinction that the Biden administration is making. We fly aircraft close to the 12 nautical mile distance from China's territory and over the area of near space. Of course, we have satellites. These balloons are flying. The first one, of course, that we know was Chinese that was shot down, was flying really in the area above 60,000 feet. It may have occasionally dipped below 60,000 feet. But this is an area that is referred to as near space, and there aren't necessarily international laws and regulations that clearly guide what kind of activity can take place there legally. But if the U.S. says it hasn't sent balloons, then maybe it has not.
Mm-hmm. Uncharted territory here in many ways. Do you think this episode could be a turning point for U.S.-China relations?
Well, so far it's been a turning point for the worse. I don't think we've hit the floor in the U.S.-China relationship. And this is despite the fact that President Biden and China's leader Xi Jinping met in November of last year in Bali, Indonesia, on the margins of the G20 meeting and agreed to try to stabilize the relationship. And since then, we have really not seen progress. there was a plan for Secretary Blinken to go to China, and that was postponed because of the balloon incident. But as I said, I think there is an opportunity now to get that back on track. But this is going to be difficult because of the political calendar. China has, every year they have these, what they call their National People's Congress and the Chinese People's Consultative Congress they hold in early March, and I doubt the visit will take place before then.
Bonnie Glaser in Washington, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And for more, we can bring in Michaela Kufna, our Washington correspondent. Michaela, what more did the White House have to say? Have they shared any new relevant findings?
Well, certainly the White House has rejected that claim by the Chinese and says that it is not flying any balloons, that it has no surveillance program above Chinese airspace, within Chinese airspace. And we heard from John Kirby, who's the spokesman of the National Security Council, and what the big difference is between that first object that was a balloon for everybody to see and the other three objects where he still won't say whether they were balloons or not. Let's take a listen.
These other three, they didn't have propulsion. They weren't being maneuvered. It was basically they were being driven by the wind. We don't know for sure whether they had a surveillance aspect to them, but we can't rule it out. So there was enough uncertainty there that, again, out of an abundance of caution, doing the prudent thing, the president directed that they get taken down.
So, and the reason they were taken down, we were told during that briefing a short while ago, is that they actually posed a threat to normal air traffic because they were traveling at an altitude between 20 and 40,000 feet. Now, the usual transatlantic flight is around about 30,000. They were not maneuverable, and that's why the president himself took the decision to have them taken down. And we're told it will take days or weeks potentially until we will get more information from that analysis, as the officials are still trying to detect actually the debris, which is strewn in very remote areas, we're told. So that's what we've learned from the American side, but the political fallout is, of course, there for everybody to see already.
Yeah, we have to bear in mind that these latest objects have not officially been linked to China, but just overall, how damaging is this episode to the already fairly strained relations between the U.S. and China?
Well, let's put it this way. The last high-level meeting between Chinese President Xi and U.S. President Biden was at the G20 in Bali at the end of last year. And the aim there was to do nothing less, but also nothing more than try and find a flaw in relations, to put in a flaw in these really sinking relations between the U.S. and China. Now, this Chinese spy balloon that has been identified and shot down has blown that pretty much out of the water. And there are there are continuous dialogue attempts going on. There's actually dialogue going on at working level, we're told. What we couldn't get information on is whether U.S. Secretary of State Blinken, who cancelled his trip to China, will now meet his Chinese counterpart at the Munich Security Conference. That's coming up in just a couple of days from now. That could be a potential for new dialogue there. And we're told from the American side that they would continue to take calls from the Chinese side, particularly at the military level. Their call wasn't taken from the American side to the Chinese, and that is seen as very troubling in terms of potential misunderstandings.
Michaela Kufna on the crowded skies over the United States. Thank you very much.